My name is Evelyn Sterling, and I am 35 years old. For most of my life, I've been a geologist, a woman who finds more comfort in the silent, patient history of rocks than in the loud, impatient world of my family. My family laughed when my father left me a pile of rocks in his will. They called it my useless inheritance, a final, fitting testament to my impractical life choices. They stopped laughing, however, when they realized those very rocks held the key to their entire future. A future that I, the family disappointment, suddenly and absolutely controlled. It was a reversal of fortune so complete, so poetically just, that even now it feels like something I would read in a textbook about pressure and transformation. Before I reveal just how I turned their years of mockery into my greatest victory, a story of bedrock and boundaries, I'd love it if you could let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. And if you've ever felt underestimated or had your passion dismissed as a pointless hobby, go ahead and hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. For all the new viewers here, make sure you subscribe to join our community of people who understand that sometimes the quietest passions can make the loudest impact. My story, like all good geological records, begins with layers of history, each one compressing the one below it. The primary strata of my life were defined by two opposing forces: my older sister, Amanda, and me. Amanda was born for the boardroom. She was sharp, decisive, and fluent in the language of profit margins and quarterly reports. She was the sun around which the Sterling family solar system revolved. I, on the other hand, was a different celestial body entirely. I was fascinated by the earth beneath our feet, by the slow, powerful forces that shaped continents and raised mountains. While Amanda was earning her MBA, I was in the field, dirty and smiling, chipping away at a rock face to read a story that was 1 billion years old. Our father, Richard Sterling, was a man of industry. He had built Sterling Manufacturing from a small workshop into a regional powerhouse, a monument to practicality and shrewd business sense. He understood Amanda. He saw himself in her ambition, in her crisp suits and confident presentations. He loved me, I believe, in the way one loves a strange, exotic pet. He was baffled by my career choice. Geology, Evie, he would ask, shaking his head over dinner. What in God's name are you going to do with that? Open a boutique for interesting pebbles. The question wasn't meant to be as cruel as it sounded. It was a genuine, perplexed inquiry from a man who saw the world in terms of assets and liabilities. To him, my passion was a liability. The family gatherings were a recurring exhibition of this dynamic. I remember one Christmas when I was 22, home from university for the holidays. I had spent weeks finding the perfect gift for my father, a man who had everything. It was a beautiful ammonite fossil, split and polished to reveal the intricate pearlescent chambers within. It was a piece of natural art, a testament to time and pressure. I presented it to him with a proud tremor in my hands. He took it, glanced at it for a moment, and said, "Oh, that's neat, Evie." He placed it on a nearby end table, next to a stack of magazines, where it was promptly forgotten. A few minutes later, Amanda presented her gift. It was a state-of-the-art espresso machine. Her presentation was flawless. "Dad, I know how much you love your coffee, and the data shows that a high-quality espresso can increase morning productivity by up to 12%. This is an investment in your continued success." My father's face lit up. He boomed with laughter, clapped Amanda on the shoulder, and immediately had it set up in the kitchen. For the rest of the evening, he made espressos for everyone, praising Amanda's thoughtfulness, her business-savvy approach even to gift-giving. My fossil, my piece of history, sat alone on the table, a silent testament to my own perceived irrelevance. I felt a familiar dull ache settle in my chest, the weight of being fundamentally misunderstood. This pattern was etched into every major milestone of our lives. When I won a prestigious scholarship for my doctoral studies in geology, my father's reaction was a lukewarm, "Well, that's nice, dear." More school, huh? That same week, Amanda secured a junior partnership at the company, and he threw a lavish party in her honor. He stood before all their friends and colleagues, his chest puffed out with pride. "My daughter, Amanda," he announced, his voice thick with emotion. "She's a true sterling, a leader, the future of this company." I stood in the back of the room, clutching a glass of champagne I didn't want, feeling like a ghost at the feast. It wasn't jealousy I felt. Not exactly. It was a profound sense of loneliness, of being an outlier in my own family. They weren't just a family, they were a company, a brand, and I was off-brand. My currency was knowledge and patience. Theirs was money and speed. And in their world, their currency was the only one that mattered. The only person who had ever truly understood my fascination was my grandfather, my father's father. He was a quiet man, a cabinet maker who loved the grain of wood the way I loved the strata of rock. He had been the one to first take me to the plot of land that would one day become my inheritance. We called it the Granite Maw, a stark 30-acre parcel of land dominated by a massive granite outcropping that looked like a great stone jaw jutting from the earth. My father had bought it decades ago in a bizarre land deal, intending to quarry it, but the granite had proved too dense, too difficult to extract. He wrote it off as a bad investment and forgot about it. But my grandfather saw something else. He would take me there for hikes, pointing out the strange angles of the rocks, the unusual resilience of the few trees that grew there. "This land has old bones, Evie," he told me, his hand resting on the warm, sun-baked granite. "Strong bones. It doesn't look like much to most folks, but some things in this world are valuable for what they are, not for what they look like. You have to know how to see." He passed away when I was in college, and with him went the only person in my family who spoke my language. Years passed. I completed my doctorate. I worked on projects around the world, mapping fault lines in California, consulting on mine stability in Australia, studying volcanic soil in Iceland. I built a career for myself, one I was proud of, but to my family, it was all a vague, eccentric hobby. "Evie's off playing with her dirt again," Amanda would say with an indulgent smile during her weekly calls. She had ascended, as everyone knew she would, to the role of CEO of Sterling Manufacturing, which she had rebranded to the sleeker, more impressive Sterling Precision. She was a titan, a force of nature in the corporate world. I was a footnote in her glorious story. Then, my father's health began to decline. It was a slow, cruel erosion, a degenerative neurological condition that chipped away at his formidable presence. Amanda, ever the efficient executive, managed his care with ruthless precision. Schedules were made, nurses were hired, and a wing of the family home was converted into a medical suite. She was a fortress of competence. I tried to help, to connect, but my contributions felt clumsy and inadequate. I'd sit by his bedside and talk to him about the ancient history of the Appalachians, about the slow tectonic collisions that formed the very ground beneath our house. He would listen, his eyes distant, and then ask, "How are the quarterly numbers? Is Amanda managing the supply chain issues?" His world had shrunk to the company, the only legacy he truly valued. Amanda would often find me there, and gently, but firmly, steer me out. "You wouldn't understand the financials, Evie. It's a lot of pressure. Why don't you go for one of your walks? Clear your head." It was the same old dismissal, now softened with a veneer of pity. She wasn't just my sister. She was my protector, shielding me from a world I was apparently too fragile and strange to comprehend. I was the family's resident dreamer, while she was the one who dealt with reality. When our father finally passed, the grief was complicated. I mourned the man he was, but also the father I wished he had been, the one who might have seen the value in a perfectly formed crystal instead of a perfectly balanced ledger. The day of the will reading arrived, a formal, somber affair in the mahogany-paneled office of the family lawyer, Mr. Albright. The room smelled of old paper and furniture polish. Amanda sat perfectly poised in a black dress, a portrait of grieving but controlled power. Beside her, sat two key members of the Sterling Precision Board, David Chen, the CFO, and Sarah Vance, the COO. Their presence felt like a statement, a corporate takeover of a family moment. I just felt small and out of place. A geologist in a room of financiers. Mr. Albright, a man who looked as old as the leather-bound books that lined his shelves, cleared his throat and began to read. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was clear. The family home, the vast stock portfolio, the art collection, it all went to Amanda. It was expected, logical. Then came the company, and the entirety of my shares and controlling interest in Sterling Precision. I bequeath to my daughter Amanda Sterling, he read. I have every confidence that she will continue to lead it to new heights. She has the mind for it. Amanda gave a single solemn nod, as if accepting a crown. David and Sarah gave her subtle congratulatory smiles. I felt nothing but a quiet sense of finality. It was as it should be, according to the laws of our family. Then Mr. Albright adjusted his spectacles and read a final clause. To my other daughter, my Evelyn, I leave the single remaining real estate asset in my personal portfolio, the 30-acre plot of undeveloped land located in West Morgan County, known colloquially as the Granite Maw. A faint smirk touched Amanda's lips. I saw David Chen stifle a snort. The air in the room, heavy with faux solemnity moments before, suddenly lightened with their shared, silent joke. Evelyn the rock girl gets a pile of rocks. How fitting, how pathetic. The Granite Maw, Amanda said aloud, her voice laced with a sweet, condescending pity. Dad's old folly. Oh, Evie, what on earth are you going to do with that? It's just a pile of worthless granite. I looked at her, at the smooth, confident mask of her face, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel small. I felt a flicker of something else, something sharp and cold and curious. I remembered my grandfather's words. Strong bones. It's valuable for what it is. I met Amanda's pitying gaze, and for the briefest of moments, I think she saw something in my eyes she didn't recognize, something that wasn't deference. It was a look that said, "We'll see." That evening, Amanda insisted on a family dinner at a ridiculously expensive restaurant. It was less a dinner and more a coronation. She, David Chen, and Sarah Vance occupied one side of the table, a united front of corporate power. I sat opposite them, a solitary island. They raised their glasses of champagne. To Dad, Amanda said. Her voice, a perfect blend of sorrow and strength, and to the future of Sterling Precision. The toast was barely finished before the talk turned to business, and then, inevitably, to me. So Evie, David began. A slick, predatory smile on his face. Big day for you, landowner. Thinking of starting a quarry? Maybe you can sell us some gravel for the new parking lot at the facility. Sarah Vance laughed, a sound like ice cubes clinking in a glass. Don't be silly, David. We can get gravel cheaper from a real supplier. Amanda just watched, a queen observing her court gestures, a faint, amused smile on her face. She was allowing them to mock me, giving her tacit approval. It was a power play, reminding me of my place. It's a geologically interesting plot, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It was the only defense I could muster, and it sounded feeble, even to my own ears. Amanda waved her hand, dismissively. A gesture that brushed away my entire life's work. Everything is geologically interesting to you, Evie. That's sweet. But in the real world, interesting doesn't pay the bills. Profit does. But don't you worry your head about it. The message was clear. Stay in your lane, little sister. Stick to your rocks, and let the adults handle the world. I excused myself early, the taste of ashes in my mouth. But as I drove home, the humiliation began to curdle and harden into something else. Resolve. They saw a pile of rocks. They saw a useless, sentimental girl. They had no idea how to see. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. The next morning, instead of wallowing, I went to the county records office. I pulled the original deed for the Granite Maw, the decades-old survey maps, the topographical charts. The clerk, A kind woman, with a dusty cardigan, looked at the parcel number. "The old Sterling Folly," she said, with a chuckle. "Nobody's touched that land in 50 years. Good luck with it." I smiled. "Thank you. I think I'll need it." I spread the maps out on a table in the archives, the old paper crinkling under my fingers. I traced the lines, the strange contours, the notation from the original surveyor: unusually dense granitic pluton, bedrock impenetrable with standard equipment. My father saw an obstacle. Amanda saw a joke. I saw a puzzle. And for the first time in my life, I felt a driving need to solve it. Not for them, not for my father's memory, but for myself. I was going to understand the granite maw. I was going to learn the story of its strong, old bones, while I was losing myself in topographical maps and historical surveys. Amanda was conquering the world. She had landed the contract of a lifetime for Sterling Precision, a multi-year, 9-figure deal with a government-adjacent aerospace consortium. The project was codenamed Chimera. It involved manufacturing a new generation of microcontrollers for deep space satellites. These weren't just computer chips. They were microscopic neural networks, so sensitive that the slightest vibration or electromagnetic fluctuation could render them useless. The contract was a coup, the kind of deal that transforms a company from a regional player into a global leader. Amanda presented it to her board with the flourish of a conquering general. She stood before a screen displaying the projected profits, a dazzling series of ascending green bars. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice ringing with triumph, "Project Chimera will not just secure our future, it will redefine it. This contract will make us untouchable." The board erupted in applause. David Chen looked at her with undisguised adoration. She was everything she had ever promised to be: brilliant, ruthless, and unbelievably successful. But buried deep in the 100-page contract, in a technical annex that Amanda had likely skimmed, was the catch. It was a clause that seemed innocuous to a layperson, but would have set off alarm bells for any geologist. The new dedicated manufacturing facility for Project Chimera, the clean fab, had to be built on a foundation of almost impossible stability. The specifications were breathtakingly precise. The bedrock had to possess a specific compressive strength and density to eliminate micro-vibrations. The land had to have a natural Geiben-Herzberg lens that prevented groundwater from rising to a certain level. Most critically, the substrate had to provide near-total insulation from terrestrial magnetic fields and stray electromagnetic interference. It wasn't just a building, it was a geological fortress, and the contract included a non-negotiable deadline. The facility had to be operational in 18 months, or the penalties would be catastrophic, effectively bankrupting the company. Amanda, in her moment of triumph, dismissed the geological requirements as a minor technical hurdle. "Get the surveyors on it," she commanded her COO, Sarah Vance. "Find a suitable plot. I don't care what it costs, just get it done." The confidence in her voice was absolute. After all, what was finding a piece of land compared to landing a $100 million contract? It was a simple matter of logistics. But geology is not a matter of logistics. It is a matter of deep time, of forces that operate on a scale far beyond human command. The surveyors, a team led by a seasoned professional named Peterson, began their work. They fanned out across the state, their drills and ground-penetrating radar at the ready. Their initial reports were optimistic. Several large, flat parcels of industrial-zoned land were identified. But one by one, they were all ruled out. I can picture the scenes in Amanda's office as the weeks turned into months. Peterson, on the phone, his voice strained. "Amanda, the site near the river is a no-go. The seismic resonance is all wrong. The ground here is like jelly. We'd be better off building on a waterbed." A week later, another report. "The parcel out east has a series of deep, unmapped microfractures in the bedrock. One good earthquake, even a minor one, and it would crack like an eggshell." Amanda's frustration mounted. Her sleek, minimalist office, once a symbol of her control, began to feel like a cage. The deadline loomed, a black cloud on her perfect horizon. We saw her stress manifest in small, telling ways. She started snapping at her assistants. The stack of negative survey reports on her desk grew higher. An email arrived from the Chimera Consortium, a polite but firm inquiry about the progress on the new facility. I can imagine her staring at the screen, a cold knot of dread tightening in her stomach, as she dictated a placating, evasive response. The business-savvy CEO, the woman who could bend markets to her will, was being defeated by something she couldn't bully, couldn't buy, couldn't control: the ground itself. Her world was built on numbers and contracts, on things that were negotiable. But the earth does not negotiate. Her frustration finally boiled over in a board meeting. Useless, she snarled, slamming a thick, useless report onto the polished table. All of you, $100 million contract. The future of this company is slipping through my fingers because you can't find a stable piece of dirt. Is that what you're telling me? The room was silent. David Chen, usually so quick with a supportive word, just stared at his notes. The pressure was cracking Amanda's flawless facade, revealing the terrified gambler beneath. It was into this charged, desperate atmosphere that Peterson, the lead surveyor, finally walked. He looked pale, his face grim. He held a single file in his hand. "Amanda," he said, his voice low, "we've run every geological model. We've cross-referenced every private and public survey in a 500-mile radius. We have pushed the parameters to their absolute limit." He paused, taking a deep breath. "There is only one parcel of land that meets, and in fact exceeds, every single one of the substrate requirements for Project Chimera." Amanda looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Well, where is it? What's the problem?" Peterson hesitated. He looked like a man about to deliver a death sentence. "There is no problem with the land, Amanda. The land is perfect. Geologically, it's a miracle." He slid the file across the table. On the cover sheet was a satellite image of a stark, rocky landscape, and printed below it, in bold letters, was the official parcel name, the Granite Mall. While Amanda's world was contracting in a spiral of panic, mine was expanding. I had turned my father's useless inheritance into my personal laboratory. I didn't have Sterling Precision's budget, but I had something better: time, patience, and a deep, intuitive understanding of my subject. I spent my days on the land, breathing in the clean, sharp air. It wasn't a pretty place in the conventional sense. It was stark, elemental, and powerful. The great granite jaw of the main outcropping dominated the landscape, ancient and indifferent. I used my savings to rent a portable core drill and a ground-penetrating radar unit. I laid out a meticulous grid across the 30 acres and began my work. It was a slow, meditative process. The hum of the drill, the satisfying grit of rock dust on my hands, the quiet focus of reading the radar scans. It was a form of therapy. I was washing away years of feeling peripheral, of feeling misunderstood, by immersing myself in the one thing that had always made perfect sense to me. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I was simply doing my due diligence, trying to create a complete geological profile of the land. But the data that came back was strange. The density of the granite pluton was off the charts, far denser than the initial surveys had suggested. The layers of schist and gneiss that surrounded it were arranged in a peculiar, almost layered formation, like natural insulation. The GPR scans showed a complete absence of the microfractures that were common in the region. It was a geological anomaly, a fortress of stone hidden in plain sight. I felt that familiar thrill, the discovery, the intellectual rush that had drawn me to geology in the first place. I knew I needed a second opinion, someone who could look at the data without my personal connection to the land. I called my old doctoral advisor, Dr. Anya Sharma. Anya was a legend in the field, a woman whose passion for geology was infectious. We connected via a video call, me sitting in my dusty, rented workspace, surrounded by rock samples and printouts, and her in her university office, a background of overflowing bookshelves. I shared my screen and walked her through the data. The core sample analyses, the seismic logs, the GPR maps. I watched her face as she looked at the information. Her professional curiosity slowly morphed into wide-eyed astonishment. She leaned closer to her screen, her glasses perched on her nose. "Evelyn," she said, her voice hushed with awe. "My God, do you have any idea what you have here?" "I have some theories," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tell me what you see." "What I see," she said, tapping her screen, "is a geological masterpiece. This isn't just stable, Evelyn. This formation, it's a natural Faraday cage made of rock. The density of the Pluton, combined with the specific metamorphic aureole of the schist and gneiss, would create a zone of near-perfect electromagnetic and seismic nullification. It's a geological dead zone, in the best possible way. Corporations, especially in aerospace or high-tech manufacturing, would kill for a site like this. It's the kind of thing you read about in textbooks, but never, ever see in the wild. It's priceless for certain, very specific applications." Her words hung in the air. Priceless for certain, very specific applications. And in that moment, all the pieces clicked into place with the force of a tectonic shift. Project Chimera, the impossible requirements, the frantic search, my father's strange, inexplicable purchase decades ago. He wasn't a geologist, but he was a shrewd man. He must have heard something, seen a report, known something that made him buy this seemingly worthless land. He didn't know the what or the why, but his instincts told him it was special. He couldn't have known he was leaving me a pile of rocks. Nebel Inu is leaving me a pile of rocks. He was leaving me a key to a lock he never knew existed. The second realization followed a heartbeat after the first, a cold, clear wave of understanding that washed over me. They are going to need this. They don't know it yet, but they will. And when they finally figure it out, they are going to have to come to me. I looked at the maps, spread across my desk, at the data glowing on the screen. It was no longer just a collection of scientific facts. It was a dossier of power. The dull ache of a lifetime, of being dismissed, began to transform, pressure and heat turning it into something hard and sharp and brilliant. For the first time, I wasn't just Evelyn the geologist. I was Evelyn Sterling, owner of the Granite Maw, and I was about to go into business. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning. I was in my small office, cataloging core samples, when my phone buzzed with a number I knew by heart, but rarely called. Amanda. I let it ring 3 times before answering, a small private assertion of control. "Evelyn Sterling," I said, my voice calm and professional. There was a brief, surprised pause on the other end. She had expected Evie. "Evie, darling. It's Amanda," she said, her voice dripping with an artificial sweetness that set my teeth on edge. It was the voice she used on difficult clients, a weaponized charm. "I was just thinking, it's been ages. I thought maybe we could have lunch, catch up, and I've been thinking about Dad's land, the Granite Maw. Maybe we could talk about it." The casual way she tried to slip it in was almost insulting. I looked at the detailed geological maps covering my wall, the damning evidence of her desperation. "I don't do lunch, Amanda," I replied, my tone even. "I'm quite busy this week, but you're welcome to come to my office. How about 10 in Amanda," I added, as if it were an afterthought. "You should probably bring your legal team." The silence on the other end of the line was more satisfying than any shouting match could ever have been. I had just dictated terms to Amanda Sterling. The game had already changed, and she was only just beginning to realize she was no longer setting the rules. Thursday arrived, a cool, overcast day. My office was small, a rented space in a modest building, but I had prepared it like a battlefield. My lawyer, Maria Fuentes, sat beside me. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman, with eyes that missed nothing. On a large monitor on the wall, Dr. Anya Sharma was waiting on a video call, her presence lending academic weight to the proceedings. The door opened, and Amanda swept in, followed by her entourage. David Chen, looking smug, and a silver-haired lawyer from a top corporate firm, a man who radiated expensive arrogance. They took in the humble surroundings. The rock samples on the shelves, the geological charts taped to the walls, and their expressions were a mixture of pity and disdain. They thought they were here to swat a fly. Amanda sat down, placing her designer handbag on the table with a soft thud. "Evie," she began, leaning forward with a conspiratorial smile. "Let's not make this complicated. The company has a potential use for the property. It's sentimental, I know, but we're prepared to make you a life-changing offer. We'll take it off your hands, pay you double its officially assessed value. $500,000. Cash. You'll never have to worry about money again." David Chen smirked. "It's more than fair, Evelyn. It's charity, really, for a plot of land that's effectively worthless." I let the silence stretch. I let their condescending offer hang in the air like a bad smell. Then I nodded to Maria. I stood up and walked to the whiteboard. "Thank you for the offer, Amanda," I said, my voice resonating with a calm confidence that seemed to surprise them. "But I'm afraid you're operating from a position of profound ignorance about the asset in question." For the next 20 minutes, I gave them a lecture. It was the most important lecture of my life. I didn't talk about money. I talked about geology. I put up charts showing the seismic stability of the granite pluton. I displayed the GPR scans, revealing the utter lack of fractures. I explained, in excruciating detail, the unique electromagnetic dampening properties of the surrounding metamorphic rock. I used terms like piezometric surface and substrate resonance frequency. They didn't understand the words, but they understood the graphs. They understood the heat maps, showing their entire region as a geologically unstable mess, with one single, perfect island of stability. My island. Then I put up the last slide. It was a page from the Project Chimera Technical Annex, the one specifying the impossible geological requirements for the clean fab. I saw the color drain from Amanda's face. I saw David Chen's smug smirk evaporate. "As you can see," I continued, turning to face them, "the granite maw is not just suitable for your project. It is the only suitable location on this continent. It's not a worthless pile of rocks. It is, for your purposes, the most valuable piece of real estate on the planet." I walked back to the table and sat down. Maria slid a single sheet of paper across the table towards Amanda's lawyer. "I'm not selling," I said quietly. The lawyer picked up the paper. His eyes widened as he read. Amanda snatched it from him. It wasn't a sales agreement, it was a lease proposal. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. The terms were, by her standards, brutal. By my standards, they were simply fair market value for a one-of-a-kind asset. A non-negotiable 25-year lease. An annual lease payment that was 10 times the paltry sum she had offered me to buy it. A 2% royalty on the gross profits of any and all products manufactured at the facility, in perpetuity. And then came the part that I knew would hurt her the most. "And there are the covenants," I said, my voice as hard and cool as the granite itself. "Clause, a sterling precision, will fund a full, independent environmental impact study, to be conducted by a firm of my choosing, at your expense. Clause B, you will post a multi-million-dollar restoration bond, to be held in escrow, to guarantee the land is returned to its natural state at the end of the lease. Clause G, my firm, Granite Maw Analytics, will have permanent on-site monitoring stations to ensure full compliance with water quality, soil stability, and electromagnetic leakage standards. Any violation will incur severe financial penalties and could trigger a termination of the lease." I leaned forward slightly. "And one last thing. Clause D, you will fund an annual endowment to Northwood University's Geology Department in the name of Richard Sterling. The endowment will create a scholarship for students pursuing unconventional geological research. My father may not have understood my work, but his name will now support a generation of students like me." Amanda was shaking, her face a mask of incandescent rage. "This is extortion," she hissed, her voice cracking. "This is insane. You're trying to ruin us. You're my sister." "No, Amanda," I said, and my voice was devoid of all heat, all anger. It was the voice of pure, cold fact. This is business. You of all people should understand that. I am offering you a solution to a problem you cannot solve any other way. These are the terms. They are not negotiable. You can take them, or you can watch Project Chimera and the future of your company go to your competitors. The choice is yours. I leaned back in my chair. Dr. Sharma, on the screen behind me, gave a slow, deliberate nod of approval. Maria sat, silent and implacable. The power in the room had shifted so completely. It was a tangible force. Amanda looked at her lawyer, her eyes pleading for a way out. The lawyer just gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. He knew they were trapped. Amanda stared at me. Her sister, the strange, quiet girl she had pitied and dismissed her entire life. And in her eyes, I saw the dawning, horrific understanding of total and absolute defeat. The aftermath of that meeting was like the slow, inexorable settling of Earth after a quake. The deal was signed. In the high-stakes world of corporate finance, the news was spun as a brilliant, strategic move by Amanda Sterling. Sterling Precision secures exclusive rights to unique geological asset, the headlines read. Amanda played her part, giving interviews about synergistic family partnerships and leveraging hidden assets. But the insiders, the board members who had to approve the eye-watering terms of the lease, knew the truth. I attended one of their board meetings, as was my right under the new agreement, to oversee the approval of the environment consulting firm I had selected. I sat at the far end of the long, polished table, a silent observer. David Chen, the man who had wanted to buy gravel from me, could barely meet my eye. He challenged Amanda directly. How did we let this happen, Amanda? How did your own sister, a geologist, get this kind of leverage over us? This deal, it kneecaps our profit margins for the next quarter century. Amanda, to her credit, faced him down. She had something we needed, David. It's as simple as that. The deal is done. We move forward. But her voice lacked its usual iron certainty. Her authority, once absolute, now had a hairline fracture running through it. Everyone in that room knew that the queen had been checkmated by a pawn. My life, in contrast, was undergoing a period of rapid, joyful construction. The first, massive lease payment arrived in my bank account. The number was so large, it seemed unreal. I didn't buy a sports car or a mansion. The first thing I did was sign the incorporation papers for Granite Maw Analytics. I leased a proper office, hired Dr. Sharma as my chief scientific officer, and brought on 2 bright young geologists from the university. It was a moment of quiet, profound triumph. I wasn't just a woman who had gotten lucky with an inheritance. I was a founder, a CEO, my own version of a Sterling in business. The construction at the Granite Mall began, but it was unlike any project Sterling Precision had ever undertaken. It was slow, meticulous, and agonizingly compliant. My chosen environmental firm, a notoriously tough group of eco-warriors, swarmed the site. They scrutinized every plan, tested every bucket of dirt, and monitored every drop of water. I received weekly reports, thick binders full of data that I read with deep satisfaction. Amanda and I had to meet, of course. The terms of our agreement necessitated it. The first few meetings were excruciatingly tense. We sat in sterile boardrooms, surrounded by lawyers and engineers, discussing water runoff plans and soil displacement protocols. Amanda, the titan of industry, had to sit there and listen, while my lead environmental consultant, a stern woman named Dr. Albright, no relation to the lawyer, a delicious irony, calmly dismantled her team's shoddy initial plans. This hydrology report is insufficient, Dr. Albright stated flatly, pointing at a chart. Your proposed runoff channels risk contaminating the local aquifer. It will have to be redesigned completely. Amanda's jaw tightened, but she just nodded and said to her chief engineer, "Get it done." The humiliation was a constant, low-grade fever. One evening, she called me. It was late. Her voice was different, stripped of its usual armor. "Evie," she began, the name sounding strange now. "I've been thinking about everything. I know I was harsh. When Dad passed, I was under so much pressure. It was an attempt at an apology, but it was clumsy, self-serving, and transparently motivated by our new business reality. I recognized it for the manipulative tactic it was. She was looking for an emotional in, a way to soften the hard edges of our contract. The old Evelyn would have crumbled, desperate for the crumbs of affection. The new Evelyn did not. I understand you're under pressure, Amanda, I said, my voice polite but coolly distant. It's a complex project. Regarding the hydrology, my team will send over the revised specifications by 5 p.m. It's tomorrow. Please ensure your engineers adhere to them precisely. I refused to take the emotional bait. I kept the conversation firmly on the ground of business, the one place she was now forced to respect me. There was a long pause, and then she just said, "Right, of course," and hung up. I had held my boundary. It felt better than any apology ever could. A few months into the project, I was on site for an inspection. I was standing on a ridge, overlooking the construction, discussing a seismic sensor placement with one of my geologists. I was in my element, wearing steel-toed boots and a hard hat, pointing at a schematic, speaking with confident authority. I didn't notice Amanda standing a few yards away, watching me. She was there for her own inspection, but she had stopped, seemingly transfixed. I saw her out of the corner of my eye. Her expression was one I had never seen before. It wasn't anger or resentment. It was a look of stunned reevaluation. For the first time in her life, she wasn't seeing Evie, her strange, dreamy little sister. She was seeing Dr. Evelyn Sterling, a competent, powerful expert in her field, a woman confidently in command of a complex situation. She was seeing a peer. She didn't smile or say anything. She just watched for a long moment, then turned and walked away. It was a small, silent moment, but it felt significant. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation. It was something far more valuable. It was the first crack in the foundation of her lifelong dismissal of me. 1 year later, the Sterling Precision Chimera facility was fully operational. It was a marvel of engineering, a sleek, windowless building nestled discreetly into the landscape of the Granite Mall. It was also a roaring success. The microcontrollers it produced were flawless, and the government contract was proving to be even more lucrative than projected. Sterling Precision was thriving, its stock price soaring, and every quarter, a significant percentage of that success, a river of profit, was diverted directly into the accounts of Granite Mall Analytics. My own firm had become a leader in the niche field of industrial geology. We were sought after by corporations around the world, who were finally realizing that building on a solid foundation wasn't just a suggestion, it was an economic necessity. I was no longer just a geologist. I was an industry expert, a respected voice, a keynote speaker at conferences. I had found a fulfillment I never knew was possible, a deep sense of purpose that came not from proving anyone wrong, but from proving myself right. My relationship with Amanda settled into a new, strange equilibrium. We met 4 times a year, in a neutral boardroom downtown, to review the lease compliance and royalty payments. She was different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a wary, professional respect. She was no longer dealing with her little sister. She was dealing with a significant and powerful business partner. She had to listen to my reports, answer my questions, and treat my expertise as the valuable commodity it was. The dynamic was forever altered. During one of these meetings, I presented the annual report for the Richard Sterling Scholarship in Geology. The first recipient, I announced, looking directly at her, is a brilliant young woman researching the stability of crystalline structures in deep earth plutons. Her work is groundbreaking. Amanda just nodded, her face unreadable. She was funding the very work her father had mocked, in his name. The irony was a constant, quiet hum in the background of our new reality. I sometimes reflected on my father's will. For so long, I had seen it as the final, ultimate act of dismissal. But now, I saw it differently. He didn't understand my world, but perhaps on some subconscious level, he understood me. He couldn't give me a place in his company, because he knew I would never have thrived there. So instead, he gave me a puzzle, a challenge that only I, with my unique and consistently undervalued skills, could ever hope to solve. He gave me the key to my own kingdom, even if he never understood what a kingdom it was. He gave me a gift, not of money, but of opportunity. The opportunity to become myself. My anger at him had long since faded, replaced by a complex, quiet gratitude. Amanda's path had been about control, about dominating the world as it was. My path, I realized, had always been about understanding, about reading the stories hidden in the world beneath our feet. And in the end, in our own small, personal tectonic collision, understanding had proved to be the more enduring and more powerful force. My family was no longer the sun I orbited. I had found my own center of gravity, surrounded by my real family, my team at Granite Ma Analytics, brilliant colleagues like Anya and Maria, who saw my value from the start. They were my chosen family, defined not by blood, but by a foundation of mutual respect and shared passion. Ultimately, the greatest discovery I made wasn't on a GPR scan or in a core sample. It was the simple, unshakable truth that my value was never determined by my family's opinion. It was intrinsic. It had been there all along, buried deep beneath layers of dismissal and self-doubt, like the granite on my land, schist waiting for me to find the right tools to excavate it and bring it into the light. The mockery that was meant to be my inheritance turned out to be the catalyst for my liberation. They handed me a pile of rocks, and I built an empire. Have you ever had a passion that others dismissed, only to have it become your greatest strength? I would be genuinely honored if you shared your story in the comments below. Reading about your journeys is one of the best parts of making these videos. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about finding your own power in the most unexpected places. Remember, your worth is not a matter of opinion. It's a fact, solid and enduring, as bedrock. You just have to be willing to do the work to uncover it. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. I wish you all the strength to find and claim your own granite maw.